This was a magic trick that shattered human perception. Let's call him Edward. As he reached out to his props, a burst of heat and smoke filled the air. The audience's attention was immediately drawn to the thick, rising mist. And from within the smoke, a spirit appeared right before their eyes. "How are you here? Are you still alive? Can you tell us what's on the other side?" The crowd bombarded the spirit with questions. The spirit looked confused, overwhelmed, but before it could say much more, Edward made it disappear. After the show, a massive crowd gathered at the back door, eager for one more glimpse of the departed soul. The reappearance of the dead was sparking a new wave of belief, but not everyone was impressed. The prince, suspicious of Edward's abilities, ordered the chief inspector to uncover his tricks and have him arrested for fraud. Let's call the inspector Tunde. He set up a projector to analyze Edward's act, but the results were baffling. In an attempt to prove his skills, Edward even allowed a child to walk through the summoned spirit. This only left Tunde more confused, so he decided to bring Edward in for questioning. First, the orange tree, now this. "Tell me how you did it." But Edward remained silent. Outside, his supporters had gathered in the streets, chanting his name. Tunde warned him, "This is fraud. The more chaos you cause, the harsher your punishment will be." Then, unexpectedly, Edward stepped out onto the balcony and addressed the crowd. "What you see is just an illusion, a magician's performance. There is nothing supernatural here. I appreciate your support, but you must go home." With that, the charges of fraud became baseless. Tunde had no reason to keep Edward locked up. The prince was furious, lashing out at Tunde for his failure. Determined to expose Edward, he disguised himself as a commoner and attended the next show. But this time, Edward summoned the spirit of Sophie. "Let's call her Sophie." The audience, shocked, began asking questions about her supposed murder. Then, Edward declared something chilling. "The real killer is here among us." This statement sent whispers through the crowd, and all eyes turned toward the prince. His past was no secret. There had been rumors of him taking a woman's life before. Suddenly, Tunde realized Edward's real intention. He wasn't performing magic. He was playing a dangerous game of deception. After the show, Tunde confronted Edward. "What are you trying to do? I just want to be with her." The following night, the prince arrived at the theater with his guards, ready to intervene. But once again, Edward summoned Sophie. The audience, growing bold, pressed for answers about the killer's identity. Instead, Edward simply stated that his necklace was missing. Panic spread through the crowd. The situation was spiraling out of control. With no other choice, Tunde stepped onto the stage. "Edward, I'm placing you under arrest." But just as he reached for Edward, his hand grasped. Nothing. Edward was gone. Tunde rushed to Edward's private workshop, where he discovered a series of intricate blueprints. That's when it hit him. There was something he had overlooked before. He hurried to a barn where he had previously spotted a strange light. Digging through the hay, he found Edward's missing necklace, and right beside it, a green gemstone. It was the missing piece from the prince's royal sword, and nearby was a red gemstone, one that had been discovered during the earlier investigation. The truth was becoming clear. Tunde wasted no time. He wrote a report to the king, exposing the prince's treason. The sword, now solid evidence, was sent to the police headquarters, but Tunde stayed behind, preparing for one final confrontation. When the prince realized what had happened, he grew desperate. "You've been fooled, Tunde. Edward tricked you." But Tunde stood firm. The prince grabbed a pistol, but before he could act, the king's elite guards arrived. Realizing he had been betrayed by his own men, the prince erupted in anger. "I was cleaning up this mess, and this is how you repay me. Soon you'll be nothing, replaced by fools, screaming for power while nothing gets done." A gunshot rang out. The prince, knowing his fate was sealed, turned the pistol on himself and pulled the trigger. With the case solved, Tunde was promoted. As he walked through the city, he reflected on the brilliance of Edward's scheme. He had been played completely. Then, a young boy approached him and handed him a package. Inside was a detailed manuscript on the secrets of the orange tree trick. Instinctively, Tunde reached into his pocket. His pendant was gone. Looking up, he spotted a familiar figure in the distance. Edward. Rushing to the train station, he arrived just as the train was leaving. Watching it disappear into the horizon, everything suddenly made sense. Sophie had drugged the prince. Edward had forged the evidence of his crimes. The fake death had been staged perfectly. And Tunde? He had been a pawn in their game. But instead of anger, he laughed. Laughed at Edward's genius. Laughed at his own blindness. And with that, the story came to an end. The real illusion. So, what was this film really about? On the surface, it looks like a love story wrapped in a mystery. But if you were paying close attention, you might have realized the truth much earlier. This wasn't about love. It was about deception. The director played with our expectations. We were so focused on the romance that we missed the bigger picture, the illusion. The film teaches us one thing: what you see isn't always the truth. Tunde saw an illusion. The audience saw an illusion. Only the prince knew the reality. From the start, the movie painted the prince as the villain. But ask yourself, what did he actually do? The only time he lashed out was when Sophie insulted his pride as a man. He may have been ruthless, but was he really the monster we thought he was? The real masterminds were Edward and Sophie. They controlled the narrative, manipulated the truth, and walked away free. The prince wasn't the villain. He was just another victim of an illusion. And most of us? We're like Toonday. A good person, blinded by what we think is real. No breakdown can replace the experience of watching this film. A great movie deserves to be experienced in full. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Welcome to Viral City, where we break down the best stories in film. See you next time.